Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Before you get any further and we scare you off, just go ahead and hit subscribe and like and leave us a review on the front end so that we don't scare you away. My name is Caleb Talley. I'm the Director of Marketing and Events for the Startup Junkie Foundation. I am joined by my co-host, Matthew Ward. Say hello, Matthew. We are without our fearless leader today, Jeff Amaran, but as my grandpa would say, he broke his leg and we had to shoot him. Not actually, that didn't happen. He just couldn't make it today, but he's with us in spirit. But I am honored to be joined today by Lais. Bo, thank you for joining us today.
Yep, appreciate it. Glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Bo, you are the founder of Lula, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you are also the co-founder of the KC Collective, correct?
That is correct.
All right, I did my homework successfully. Tell us about Lula. What's that? Full disclosure, I've actually heard a little bit about Lula, I think at a startup crawl a couple of years ago, a year or two ago. So, but I want to hear, for those that haven't heard about Lula.
Yeah, so, Lula looks quite a bit different than back when we were in the startup crawl in Fayetteville. Lula initially, when we launched the product, it was a mobile app to instantly connect homeowners with immediately available service contractors, such as plumbers, electricians, HVAC contractors. We have since pivoted to focus exclusively in the property management space. So we handle property maintenance for quite a few property management companies here in the Midwest. Our platform is designed to eliminate the hassle of managing maintenance for property managers while improving the resident experience and reducing the maintenance costs for property owners.
Very cool. So I've got to ask, what led you all that direction? What led to the pivot?
Yeah. So after launching in late 2017, after about 9 to 12 months in the marketplace, we noticed that about 80% of all of our jobs were coming from about 20% of our customer base. So we decided to pick up the phone and talk to these customers and find out why they were ordering so many jobs. And what we found out was that they were DIY landlords or property management companies, or property managers, I should say. And so we really started to explore what that looked like. And what we found out is that one of the biggest headaches for any property management company, especially once they get over 100 doors of management, is maintenance. It's just a very big hassle. Today, traditionally, a work order gets put in by the tenant. The property manager will then coordinate the availability of the tenant and one of their preferred vendors, and then cross their fingers that the vendor goes out there and actually takes care of it. And as we all know, if all of us have had work done on our homes or rental property at some point in time, there's nothing more frustrating than waiting around for someone that never shows up to take care of an issue, especially if it's rather urgent. So we've developed a platform that basically automates the entire work order process and coordination for property managers while providing complete visibility for them and the residents into the actual stage of every work order process. So no one has to guess of where's the provider, when are they coming, if they're en route, if they're actually there. And then service notes and pictures are populated back in the property management software for the property managers.
And so, are the tenants the ones that are still putting in those orders, or they're putting it into their landlords, and the landlords are going through that Lula platform?
Yeah. So how it works today is all different property management companies use different property management software, right? You've got Appfolio, you've got Rent Manager, Buildium. So our platform actually plays nicely with all those property management softwares that they're already using today. So tenants will go to the website of the property manager, which is leveraging one of those platforms, and put in their work order. That work order then is submitted directly to us because we have an integration with the property management software. And then our system essentially takes over and feeds updates to all parties involved throughout the entire life cycle of that work order.
Awesome. And so tell me a little bit about just going from Lula to KC Collective. Tell us a little bit about what KC Collective is, because I'm less familiar with that.
Yeah. So, at a high level, it's an organization, nonprofit organization that we put together to help really early stage founders, especially first time founders, leverage each other's networks to better succeed in the Kansas City entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're very intentional about getting together. Since COVID, obviously we're not physically getting together, at least not in the groups in droves that we were, but we still do everything virtually, as I imagine you all are doing as well. But we're very intentional about making meaningful connections that will help, um, further deepen your network and connections that could help with your startup. We also put together, the other co-founder and I, Donald Hawkins, he's a great serial entrepreneur himself here in Kansas City. We decided to more than just a nonprofit organization to leverage each other's networks. We decided to put together a bunch of free perks, right? So that first-time startup founders could, eliminate some of those line items from their early stage startup. And so we put together it's nearly $2 million in free perks now, $30K in, AWS credits, $20K in Stripe free processing, 90% off HubSpot, Intercom for free, Carta for free, which is an equity management platform, Dialpad for free. So we continually add additional perks on a monthly basis that can drive some real value. What we have to do is educate these early stage first time founders not to engage in those free perks until they're absolutely ready, because although you get 30,000 with AWS, for example, you have 24 months to use it. So if you've only got a hosting bill of $30 a month, I would suggest wait to engage in that perk until you're ready, right?
Absolutely. And so how is that structured? It's a membership base, sounds like.
So really there's some qualifications to join, but it's free. I mean, again, it's a nonprofit organization, so we do have a lot of sponsorship and fundraising to support all our initiatives. But really, you just need to be a Kansas City-based founder that has a startup that you're actively pushing forward. There's a difference between having a startup that you're pushing forward and being a hobbyist, right? So we want to make sure that you are very intentional and actively pushing your startup forward, because we want people that have 2 feet in, not 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So outside of that, if you're a Kansas City-based startup and you're very serious about moving your startup forward and your early stage, we focus on the early stage segment, then Kansas City Collective is a great place for you to be.
Awesome. So that's something that I guess I probably need to have a conversation with you about later, about how getting those sponsors, because Startup Junkie as the foundation also as a nonprofit organization, we kind of do similarly structured, but we have been traditionally grant funded, and so looking for opportunities for sustainability is going to be paramount.
Sure. There's a lot of opportunity with large corporations, right? Especially ones that are looking for great entrepreneurs with great ideas. So there's a lot of connections, meaningful connections you can make there, and they're willing to write some checks in order to support and have access to the community that you're building. So we can certainly have a conversation offline about that. And I think the KC Collective and Startup Junkies should talk about maybe doing some events or something together, because I went to school at University of Arkansas for a few years, and my brother is the associate head coach there. Still a family there. Love Northwest Arkansas. Awesome. I would like to see Kansas City get more involved with you all.
No, I agree. I think it makes the most sense. We're so close regionally. I mean, we're just as close to Kansas City as we're actually closer to Kansas City than, say Little Rock or some other regional areas. It makes a lot of sense to really plug in. And as the director of events here at Startup Junkie, I can go ahead and tell you, yes, let's do it.
Awesome.
Let's do some events. And I feel like I've taken up all the question time, Matthew. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, something I'd be curious about is with the creation and development of the KC Collective, what have been some of the more unexpected aspects of going through that with the company?
Yeah. Are you talking about Lula, or are you talking about the company KC Collective?
Both be wonderful.
But yeah. I'll tell you what. So I have met some amazing entrepreneurs through the KC Collective that I didn't even know existed and lived here in Kansas City, right? So it's interesting to see some of the connections. In fact, Donald Hawkins and I, when we went through a program here that the Enterprise Center of Johnson County puts on called Pitch Perfect. And I was the first cohort, and he was like the third or fourth cohort, and we'd never met. Okay, even though we'd gone through the same program, lived here, very active entrepreneurs in the community, we met at an ECJC picnic, and we immediately hit it off, right? And he was telling me about the KC Collective that he was thinking about creating, and I was like, that's interesting. I've been working on this idea for creating perks, and we just decided, okay, let's do this together. So we ended up doing it together, and fast forward 2 years from now, and we're officing together. We're we're introducing each other to other funds that we know, and investors, and meeting a lot of other entrepreneurs, and it's helped us, and it also helps being around a lot of entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, that are actively pushing their startups forward, very serious about it. Like, you feed off that energy, right? And so it's just great. I miss being physically in the room with our organizational members. I really, really miss that. But KC Collective has been great. I've been able to receive help that I need from other entrepreneurs in the organization, but I've also been able to offer a lot of help, because there are, Lula's my third startup technically, but there's a lot of first-time founders that, it's when you're in a group that's actively helping each other intentional, you can avoid a lot of mistakes that others have already been through. So I would say that's probably the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, and that's great. I know with these entrepreneurial support organizations, they're almost these pillars that you need to be successful. And I know that Caleb had a recording probably a while back about some of those pillars with like capital and talent and culture and all these different aspects. And the community is definitely a pivotal piece of that, developing a entrepreneurial support organization.
Yeah, 100%. Really, when you think about it, what makes a strong entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? It takes a lot of different pillars, as you just said, right? You need strong founders with great ideas. You need access to capital. You need mentorship. You need, incubators and accelerators. And I think the KC Collective kind of falls in there, although we're not officially an incubator, we're kind of evolving into one just naturally. But then you really need universities, corporations, and they need government. Right? You need all of them to play nicely with one another in order to be a really strong entrepreneurial city. And I definitely think that Kansas City is on the way up. I think that we're not nearly as mature as that I would like us to be, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
And ESOs like ours and yours, they play such a pivotal role in that as a pillar. And just going back to what we mentioned before we went on the air. At the beginning of the pandemic, you and I connected just by chance, really, just in a shared effort to communicate resources to entrepreneurs at the start of the pandemic. I felt like in March and April, our office quickly became like the ER for startups and small businesses, because we work with a lot of small businesses as well. And you just kind of got the feeling, I don't know, that you really were a part of something bigger than yourself. Me having been in this role only for a year, it was just really interesting experience to see that play out and to feel like I was really adding value to that entrepreneurial ecosystem in some capacity by even just providing that information. I know you did a lot of that too, putting together information about, disaster loans and different things like that.
Yeah, no, I think, I was digging into it like a lot of entrepreneurs I think were at the time, right? And I came across your article and I'm like, okay, this is great. And then I started digging into it more. And then once I started sharing that with our group, then you kind of get sucked in, right? Now you got everyone asking you, you're all of a sudden an industry expert in something that we've never dealt with before, right? So I ended up reaching out directly, to different government entities and had someone that was willing to take the time to help share information quickly that I could pass back to our organizational members. And so, obviously the pandemic was, it was a terrible thing. I mean, we're still dealing with it today, but, it was nice to, I think, see a lot of entrepreneurs, in different areas come together. You and I had some conversations and shared information as we were receiving it. And I mean, there's a silver lining to everything, right? And I think that's one of them.
Yeah. And I have, I say this, but I don't really have much experience outside of Northwest Arkansas, but we put together a kind of a virtual startup week where we just got a bunch of different people from different startups, give them the opportunity to kind of tell their story and their pandemic experience, televise that, put it out for people to consume. And a lot of those stories involved just how entrepreneurs here in Middle America, Northwest Arkansas, Southern Missouri, just kind of help each other. It's so much more collaborative. And you had some people say that, they've come from different parts of the country where that's not always the case. And so it's just really cool to be able to, us never having met each other, in ecosystems, neighboring ecosystems, working together for the benefit of our entrepreneurial community.
Yeah, 100%. No, I agree. I think that's great, and we really like what Donald and I always talk about what you guys are doing there in Northwest Arkansas. Really like what you guys are doing, and in a lot of ways, I think your guys's, your entrepreneurial ecosystem's a little bit ahead of Kansas City in some aspects. So it seems like you have a lot of corporations that are pretty heavily involved in the entrepreneurial community, and we do have several here in Kansas City that are involved, but we'd like to see more of it, right? But I think that we're always asking investors to take more risks, but on the other side, I think that founders, I think we need to do bigger things. We need to have more exits, right? More exits and bigger exits. I don't know if you all read the headlines with Backlot Cars here in Kansas City. That was a KC found company. So they just had a $425 million exit, KC-based startup in a period of 5 to 6 years, I believe it was. But we need more of those. We need more of those wins, right? Pump that money back into the community and have it reinvested and redeployed. But investors, yes, I'd like to see them take some more risks, because I think Midwest investment funds are a little more conservative than what you see on the coast, right? But at the same time, we need to see some bigger exits and more wins from the founders.
Absolutely, I agree. Matthew, you look like you were about to say something.
Definitely had my wheels churning. So with Lula, are you looking to raise capital? Are you bootstrapping it? I'd be curious to hear about how that whole process is going there.
Yeah, good question. So we raised to date $1.2 million. And that was right after we pivoted. We had 2 funding rounds, early round of about 400,000, another round of just under 800,000 when we pivoted. We actually raised the money from one of our partners in the property management space, led our second round, and we are actively raising as we speak. I literally just started raising another round so that we can now expand into other markets. So we're going to be expanding into St. Louis next month, and we have expansion plans for Dallas before the end of the year.
Awesome.
How has that experience been for you with venture capital? Because I know there's almost 2 different types of modes with speed. When you're bootstrapping it, you can go a bit slower, but you have more control with what's going on. But then with venture capital, you have that expectation of, hey, you got to grow right now. If you don't get going, then something's got to change, and you kind of lose control there. So what's been your experience with going through that?
Yeah, so venture capital, it's different, right? I usually tend to try to avoid venture capital until absolutely necessary, just because of the control aspects. But even when right now we're talking to VC firms, right? We're still considering this a seed round, not Series A. Still considering a seed round, but we're raising up to $2 million. And so it's really more about not just the capital at this point, right? Our revenue numbers are pretty good. So it's about connections that they can make. So I'm really specifically targeting VC funds that are in the prop tech space, and then having conversations with other founders that they invested in. Kind of do my research on them before I actually have those conversations, and then make a hit list of who I want to talk to, and then I find out who can make an intro for me and have that conversation. And then look, I've talked to some that I really, really like, and then there's some within 15 minutes I'm like, this is not going to be a good fit, right? Regardless if they want to write our check or not. I think it's really important for founders not to get so excited about the money and the check that's being written, and really make sure that this is someone that they want to get in bed with, because it's like entering into a marriage. They're going to be there for the next, 3, 4, 5 years until you hopefully get to that exit. And so you really need to, go through a dating process, if you will, of making sure that they're a good fit, and don't get, really excited about the check they're able to write.
Absolutely. And then doing a little bit of homework on you, Bo, saw that you were also a Pipeline Fellow. And so I'm curious about that, organization.
Yeah. So Pipeline's been phenomenal. Like, it is one of the best programs here in the Midwest that I've ever been part of. And I've been part of quite a few. It's a year-long program, right? So they only take 12 entrepreneurs every year. So they interview 12 entrepreneurs, they interview a lot of entrepreneurs, and then they select 12. And then you have 4 modules before your final demo day, right? And the modules are very specific about different topics: value chains, financials, ideal customer. And you spend 4 days, like 10 to 12 hour days, of working with extremely smart mentors that are leading the modules, and then your cohort, and really go deep on each of those subjects. And when Lula started this, at the beginning of the year in Pipeline, it's even changed even more, right? Like, we've really identified who our ideal customer really is, right? We've really understand our financials now, which a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with financials, right? I'll admit that I did before, going through this program. But we have our last program is really about putting it all together now, or the last module, is about putting it all together. And then we're going to have our demo day here in a couple months. I was really hoping it would be in person, but it's kind of up in the air whether that's going to be virtual or not. Probably most likely virtual, but it's a really fun event, and Pipeline just does a tremendous job in spending the time with each entrepreneur that they select. And that's the reason why they only select 12, because they spend an enormous amount of time with you, really helping evolve and define your startup.
It's kind of like an accelerator on steroids.
It is, and it's long, right? It's hard. It's kind of hard to call an accelerator. It feels like, just because it's a year-long program, right? But it is. It's like an accelerator program, but between each module, you're doing a ton of homework too, right? So you really have to make the time to focus and get it done.
What would you say was probably some of the biggest takeaways you've had so far? You're approaching 11 months into it.
Yeah, it would be the ideal customer, really defining who our target market really was, and it's not all property managers that have X number of doors. It's what type of property manager, right? Is it multifamily? Is it single family rentals? Is it, townhomes, is it mixed bag? How many customers can we attack nationally that are in our ideal segment? So just to give you an example, so our ideal customer is property managers of single family home rentals that have 10 to 1,000 doors, okay? Now, there's about 95,000 decision makers in the United States that represent that segment. However, the largest segment is the DIY landlords, and there's nearly 13 million of those that have 1 to 10. We actively go sell to that middle market tier of residential property managers, because we want to get a property management company that has 100, 200 doors, because there's a lot of revenue opportunity there. However, that bottom market has so many that now we form partnerships, like with a company here in Kansas City called Simplify. They're actually in Northwest Arkansas, so we'll be entering that market with them. But we've integrated with them because they go after the DIY landlords, but we aren't going to go sell to one DIY landlord that only has 2 properties, right? Because it's just a lot of time to spend to acquire that customer. But now we can penetrate that segment of the market through partnerships. So that's what we do. So, when I first entered into Pipeline, we were going after multifamily. And, everything that we've learned now going through that process seems like common sense now. And I'm like, why didn't I know this? But, multifamily, we still do a lot of business there, but we don't actively go after multifamily property managers. And the reason why is they have on-site maintenance. right? And so what they're using us for is overflow and emergency night and weekends. So we'll still take that business from them. But with single family rentals, there is no on-site maintenance at each individual home property, right? So they're almost exclusively using third-party contractors, which is a better fit for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I need to get you in touch with the guys that own my house that I rent and the property manager. It's been raining for, I don't know what the weather is like there, but it's been raining for about 4 days straight here, and I have a nice little leak in my living room that
you need Lula. We got 4-hour SLA on that, my friend.
Exactly. Exactly. To your point, we waited about 48 hours for the first person to come take a look. So I think I'm going to be dropping that information in my next envelope with my rent check.
There you go.
Throw your card in there.
Do it.
Awesome. Well, before we get ready to land the plane, Bo, one thing we talk with, as we talk with entrepreneurs, we like to ask them, if they have the opportunity to go back and talk to their younger self, say, this is your third venture, but, say you're going to talk to yourself at the beginning of starting Lula, or even with your first venture, what's some advice you would give your younger self?
Make sure you have a therapist ready. That would be one. I tell you what, it's such an emotional roller coaster. I handle it much better now than I used to, but the highs, when they're high, are really high. When they're low, it's really low, and then you have everything in between. And sometimes you hit what you feel is rock bottom. You feel like there's no way out of this. You start questioning yourself. Am I not the right person to do this? Is this idea going to make it? The very next day you could feel like you won the lottery, so like the emotional roller coaster is just unbelievable. But I think if I could go back, it would be just to, try to stay, know that you're going to need to be even killed. And, there's going to be highs and lows, but just keep fighting. I mean, listen, you have to remain part of the conversation, right? Like you have to survive. And I mean, Lula's been around since late 2017. And we just recently, this year found product market fit. Our revenue's growing now, about 15% month over month. We've identified who our ideal customer segment is. All the pieces are aligning. And, back in, early 2019, there were question marks. We had just pivoted. We were fairly confident the pivot was the right choice, but you just don't know. There was a lot of question marks, right? And so you just got to keep grinding, right? And you don't get too high and don't get too low. That would be my advice.
That's great advice. So for those who are listening right now and want to know more about Lula, want to possibly connect with you, or maybe they're listening from Kansas City and they want to learn more about KC Collective, where can they find out more about all these things?
Sure. Yeah, if you're a property management company or a real estate investor, you can find out more about Lula at lula.life. That is LIFE. It is a little bit unique. Don't add the .com on the end like a lot of people try to do. If you want to learn more about KC Collective, we want to hear from any startup founder that's in the KC region. You can find out more at kccollective.org.
Awesome. Well, I can guarantee you that we are going to connect before too long, especially when we can have some in-person events. I would absolutely love to connect with y'all, and maybe we even combine our startup crawl and have it crawl all the way from Fayetteville to Kansas City.
That'd be interesting. That'd be interesting for sure.
We'd have to have designated drivers, though, of course. Well, Bo, I appreciate you for joining us. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and I look forward to seeing more, in the coming days, weeks, and months, years, on Lula and KC Collective.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Take care.